back. Josh and Sergey Weekly. We are talking about our weekly entrepreneur journey. Josh, what's going on?
Not too much, Sergey. A little disappointed that we're not matching white again, like in episode 1. But it's been good. How about you?
It's been intense and with lots of takeaways, which we'll address this session. But I am definitely on the same. I agree with the white. We got to bring that back. White shirts back.
Exactly, especially with the white backdrop. So what's been up with you lately?
Just working on getting new clients for social media, purely focusing on that, and doing business development on LinkedIn and Instagram, and learning how to do it really well. I've learned it's very, very hard, especially on Instagram, because trying to find the right businesses from the right vertical with the right location, which I primarily trying to find people who are in Toronto, is difficult. You have to know the right hashtags. You need to know how to filter out people who just post because they like posting this stuff versus actual businesses. And so I did learn quite a lot there, and had some interesting takeaways on form versus function when you are creating an Instagram post. But this is more for my personal stuff, which I will dive into. I thought it was really interesting, and I validated that with a few posts that I made. And so that was one.
What do you mean by form versus function?
So the form versus function, this is what I've learned by looking at a lot of Instagram posts, is that some of them have just pure form. They look beautiful. They have this white background, so those rosy colors, and usually a lot of women faces, and there's so many subscribers that all this happy and peaceful, and everybody's happy. The other posts are very much function driven. There are maybe some stats, maybe there's certain like big quotes, and there's not much going on in the background. The picture itself almost doesn't exist, but the content is very good. Somebody creates, there's an account that somebody creates stats for folks like Elon Musk or Warren Buffett. They're very, very profound. The work that they're putting in is really very, very cool, but there's no picture, or there's a very small picture. So it's purely function driven. But if you combine both, if you combine something that is really, really beautiful with an actual post, with an actual quote, or with an actual copy that is also has meaning, that's when the engagement is at its best, because it really caters to people who are visual and people who prefer to read. So those are really important points. And I do like, for example, I like beautiful pictures, but I also want to see something meaningful. So I would like to see both things. And when I posted a picture of Elon Musk with a quote, and then that his expression on the face made a lot of sense to that quote, I hit my highest number of likes in an hour.
Right.
Which was really interesting. It was free, obviously, or all organic. And that brings me to my next point, where the best ideas come from at the moment of execution, not at the moment when you think about them. Because when I'm, for example, I'm thinking about how can I do something, you have certain ideas, but the best ideas always come usually when you start doing it. And then after you start experiencing certain things, the better ideas come up, and then you know exactly what to do versus just contemplating and not taking action.
Right. So do you have an example of that playing out?
Oh, absolutely. So when I was looking at how could I change my Instagram strategy, because I knew that just posting quotes from guests on my podcast is not going to work, because it's not good enough. It's easy for me to do, but it's not good enough. I was thinking, what kind of strategy, can I create? And I was thinking maybe I just create the work purely for brand campaigns, or sorry, not brand campaigns, but examples of the best brands, or they maybe the advertisements they ran, and that just create pictures of that, which will share a certain value, and then they will be visually beautiful. But I thought about that. I was not very happy with the idea, and then I wasn't quite sure exactly how I would do it. I went on Tom Bilyeu's account, who is an impact theory guy and a Quest Nutrition CEO, and I really liked what he does. He has a mix of quotes, the mix of visual pictures, and that was good. But I still wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And then when I started when I started doing it, when I started, okay, I need to create a few posts, I decided, look, I'm going to start with, just going to start with quotes. And when I did, I immediately and like realized, okay, so I have people who are that I look up to, that I learned a lot from, like Steve Jobs, like Elon Musk, a lot of others. How can I make it actually better than other accounts on Instagram? And the idea came up right away where I would post pictures that are rare, that are rarely been seen, that are pictures that are that are like behind the scenes. And so each picture will have a quote that is meaningful to that what's going on in the picture, and it will have a meaningful description of explaining what it is behind the actual post. And so that's what I did for the first two, and that's what I was super excited about, because that really speaks to my core passion of studying super successful people and then sharing that knowledge. It's mindset, it's business, it's marketing, it's everything, and that only came out after I started doing it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, Instagram is definitely an interesting platform, and I think everything you said is important for it because, like most things, right, the higher quality your content is, the better it'll do. Especially Instagram, I think you're right, where you're looking for like the perfect intersection of function and what was the other F? Form. Yeah. And then you mix that with, great quotes and like from powerful people with big names. You know, Buffett is just going to get probably a lot more eyes and a lot more engagement than someone without, his stature.
But also the inside, Josh, is that there was somebody posted a picture of Warren Buffett when he was in his late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never seen that picture. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see Warren Buffett in his red tie. Everybody's seen that picture. We want to see something that nobody else has seen. And when I was looking at Steve Jobs pictures, I found him at Pixar in shorts in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a profound picture. And what happens is your account it will be not just a bunch of pictures, but it will be something that people can go back to and check it out. It's a collection of photographs that are meaningful to you.
Right.
There's a lot more value in it versus posting a cat picture, which will be good at the moment, but how many people will go back to it?
Yeah. No, it's a great point, because you're and it's a small step too, right? Like it's not a monumental task to go that extra mile, find that very rare picture, but it could have a huge, outcome relative to the extra work that's taken. So it's a great idea. I mean, anytime you can think outside the box, this goes for anything, right? Social media, business, dating, whatever. Anytime you can kind of think a little bit outside the box, do something a little bit different, show that little more extra effort and passion, it's usually going to lead to pretty good results.
But it came out, Josh, only because when I was creating that post, I was looking for a picture of Steve Jobs. And when I opened the pictures of Steve Jobs, like they're all boring, all keynote type pictures. We all seen them. No point on uploading 1 billionth picture on Instagram of Steve Jobs. We all seen him. We all know him. I bet not that many people seen him in the shorts at Pixar. Not that many seen him with his wife in the country, in his country house. I haven't seen those pictures many times, and I read all biographies of Steve Jobs, and I've seen all the pictures, and that was like, that just has this almost like tangible value, and you want to see it's rare, and it's meaningful. So even if you post just that picture, it's already great. But if you combine it with something that speaks to it, that drives people. I'm a big believer in quotes, by the way. Like I do like quotes, not just the ones that are saying we can do it or crush it or everything, but have certain meaning behind it. Thing. So I'm really excited about that and working on scaling it a lot more.
Right. And it seems to be like, so I like quotes, don't get me wrong, but Instagram seems to me, as not the biggest Instagram user in the world, like 50% quotes. Maybe I'm a little off by a few percent, but it's so quote reliant. And so if it is, then your quotes better be pretty damn good to stick out. You know what I mean? Or the pictures better be, because when I go through the Explore page and it's like 60% like black background with like a business dude with like white text with a quote, and you're just scrolling and just like it all looks the same. But if you were to scroll and see a 19 whatever 80s Steve Jobs in his shorts, and yeah, stuff like that's going to stand out. So I mean, that's probably a good way to think about it, right? If you're scrolling through the explore page, how would you stand out?
Right.
And that's one way to do it for
And,
sure.
I will say you're absolutely right. And I thought about how you do differentiate yourself. And the way you differentiate yourself is that your quote is it never compromises the picture. It never, ever
Hmm.
compromises the picture. I will never, and I think this just goes back because I'm a photographer, I'm a visual person, and I hate compromises. Uh,
Hmm.
and I looked at, like the way the picture looks for me is very important. So I would never put the picture that obstructs something that is important for a viewer, because that's a crime, especially for you like photography. And so I would never do that. And I've seen so many accounts that have hundreds of thousands of followers that exactly are like that you just
Hmm.
described. So I think combining both will be very, very cool. Now we'll see how that goes in terms of the volume, but I think there will be a shortage of people are who are super successful that we could find and create really good content.
Right, for sure. And so how's your experience been the last week or two around creating content? What's an update or just kind of more
Sure.
in general?
With regards to creating content, I what I've learned in the last couple of weeks is that focus is very, very important. And I've learned that, sure, Gary Vee says you have to focus on everything, and it makes a total sense. I absolutely understand.
Does
Many
isn't focus on everything an oxymoron? Because you can't focus on everything, right? Because
so
how
let me
much focus can you give to any one thing if you have to focus on everything?
let me clarify. When I mean focus on everything, I mean on most of the social media platforms. And
Right.
what I mean by that is you have a clever repurposing content strategy where you create anchors of content like audio podcast or a video, the one we're recording, you transcribe it and you slice it and you post it on Medium, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And that, I mean, focusing on everything. So I think that's a good strategy, because obviously not all the audience is on one platform. But what I've learned is that it's important to, again, I find all these learnings are things that I and you already know. They're not new. We already knew that, but then you go back to it and like, oh yes, here's an insight. So focusing
Hmm.
on one or two things and getting really good at it is really, really important. So for example, I'm focusing on the podcast and Instagram. And
Hmm.
so when I focused on the podcast, I was able to get a lot of surprising number of listeners and get a lot of guests. And right now we have I think 16 episodes published in a relatively short period of time, in under 2 months.
Hmm.
And there's more guests coming, which I'm super excited about. So, and that podcast allows me to connect it to my Instagram account, connect it to my website, and that is a vehicle to let listeners or viewers or followers to know about what I do. And if you focus on all other things, it's harder to go deep into one thing, because it's the details that matter. Like when
Hmm.
you post, like an example with Instagram, you can post a lot of pictures, but will they have the form and function, and how will they be different than others? Sure, you can maybe get some followers, but how many people will be actually the ones who are genuinely interested? So I think just going deep and then working on one or two things and getting really good and getting a loyal following. Doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of people. It could be 100 that are actually like your content. That is a really good way to start, because you always can start posting on other platforms, and that's important. But it's probably good to start with something or one thing. So that's what I
Hmm.
found was very interesting.
Yeah, and I think we touched on it a little bit in our first weekly, where we say you pick a few. So I think the way to kind of reword your intro sentence is like focus on a few, but have a plan in place to take advantage of many, right? So like for
Right.
you, podcast and Instagram are like one and two, and you're focusing to make that content really, really awesome, your account really, really awesome, you know, the website for those pages really, really awesome. But then you repurpose that content so that you can still take advantage of the others. So like you said, you know, you record a podcast. Well, you could transcribe it and post a blog on your website. You can take snippets of it and post it on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Now well, I know for a fact, like you specifically are not going to spend as much time per se writing the best blog post in the world. You're going to spend more time recording an awesome podcast and then putting a marginal amount of energy and resources into flipping that into a blog post so that you can still get potentially pretty high return for very, very little additional work.
Really important insight, Josh. Absolutely agree. Bet on your strength, bet on the stuff that you want to do. I want to be on video and audio. I don't want to be writing anything, ideally, unless it's a short copy on Instagram or a short email. And that is really important. That is really important. And so what I will do, I will create a blog and I'll later, hopefully will be able to outsource it, but I will spend all my energy on the video and audio content and create pictures on Instagram just because I do like that as well. But other writing stuff, I probably won't spend too much time on it, like you would do with your emails that are, by the way, really, really good. And that is your strength.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes into another part that I think you'd mentioned off the air, which is play to your strengths, right? Because I don't like video that much. I don't know the tech behind it. I don't know the hardware. You know all that stuff, and you enjoy it. You're passionate about it. So, you know, that's why I let you edit this video. And and if I ever need to know what mics and stuff to buy, I just ask you, because I just don't know it. I like writing and I like the audio part. So, you know, I have my podcast too. Video is just not a big focus of mine because it's not a huge passion and strength of mine. You know, in that sense too, right? You're picking the best platforms, and then you're also playing to your strengths.
How is, George, what's going on with you? We talked a little bit about your firm off air. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? What's going on? What are you working on right now?
Yeah, I mean, I really love business in terms of less like the social marketing branding stuff and more just like operations of a business, how to run it, how to structure it, how to optimize it, what to outsource, when to hire, things like that. So I've had a pretty cool few months with my own firm that's been growing. I have a few more resources now. I made my first hire last month. So it's just, how do you onboard people? How do you manage them? And then looking for a second potential kind of service offering. And you and I have talked about it, and we probably will go into detail in future episodes on things like niching down and getting really narrow with a product offering. And then once you get that one up and running, at one point do you look to add a second one? So right now I'm looking to add like a second tangential service offering that follows really nicely with the first one that I have that's working pretty well. So thinking about that from like a grand scheme of things, how that might look, testing it out, right? The best way to figure out if a product or a service will be a good fit or a good option to offer customers is to go offer it to them and see what they say, see what their feedback is. So far the feedback has been good, but the timeline on it, it's not really worth going into full detail, but the onboarding of interested clients takes a little bit longer than the first service offering of mine. So it's trying to think, okay, well, this is a business reality. How can we get around that? Or how can we circumvent or speed up that process? Or maybe you just have to accept it, right? Certain things in business, you have to accept the way they are, the way they work. So just answering those questions, doing testing, talking to potential customers and things like that.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's not easy. It's fun. Usually the harder things are more fun when you figure them out. If you can't figure them out, they can stop being so fun. But I mean, listen, we didn't sign up for this to get easy answers and easy paths, right? As an entrepreneur in general.
I throw in an extra insight that I've learned that I thought was so good. Probably one of the most important ones that I've learned in a couple of months, that you have to do something, or whatever you're doing, you have to be prepared to do it for the next 10 years. Otherwise, there's no point in doing that. And everybody is hungry, everybody's super determined. But if their timeline is 1 month, if their timeline is 2 years or 3 years, it doesn't matter, because you're going to crush them. And the longer you do it, and if we look at it at whatever you do, your business, your career, your expertise in one area, if you look at it in the 10-year stint, there is almost no competition. There's nobody there. Very few people are there. And if you look at that, it doesn't really matter how crappy or how stupid or whatever, how many times you failed right now, it does not matter. Because if you look at it at 10-year term, then things are going to be very, very different. People are going to stop, and you're going to overtake them, and you're going to crush them. And I've learned that from two people. Tom Bellio talked a lot about that, but he talked a lot about that, and I kind of understood it, but it really hit me when I was listening to David Cancel, the CEO of Drift, and he said it again, and I think he gave a little bit more insights into it. He spoke about it from the view of Peter Thiel. When you're trying to avoid competition, everybody's trying to do the same things. Everybody's trying to run social media or run a law firm, but how are you going to be better? Well, a lot of times the answer is not marketing or being more aggressive, as most people are, capturing leads, getting more calls, more emails, but doing it for longer and avoiding it to stop. That is one of the things where you can gain a lot.
For sure. That's I think we're coming up on 20 minutes, Sergey, too. So that's kind of a good last point to hang our hats on. Anything else on your mind, or should we wrap this up and see everyone next week?
Well, we're almost at the end of it. I think it's good. Let me see. I think I had a list. I did prepare a list of things to talk about. We obviously didn't cover all of them, but yeah. So one thing I will throw in a super simple one. There's this huge difference between talking about something and theoretical part and actually doing. It always comes out differently. It almost comes out usually harder. And there's more things that nobody expected. And when you actually practitioner versus a theoretical, making theoretical statements, that is really good. That is, even if you failed, it's perfect. That means really it's a good starting point. So that point is that I thought was really interesting. Anything from you, Josh? Anything you were looking forward to this week or next week?
Just chugging along. Like I said, I'm kind of in like a market research testing type phase. So just going through those motions and keeping everything running. I enjoy the podcast. We'll include links to our stuff below. We've referenced a bunch of stuff. Sergey's got a podcast. I've got a podcast. He's got a website. We both got Instagram. So we'll throw that info underneath. And that's it for me. We'll check in next week.
Yeah, guys, subscribe and let us know what you think. Leave us the 5 to 6 star. This is a 6-star only podcast, as you see the cover. We only want 6 stars. We actually need reviews. We need reviews. So send us a review. Leave a comment. Send us an email.
Awesome. Thanks, Sergey. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Josh. Talk soon.